Good evening and welcome to From the Sails Light Years. My name's Courtney Ammenhauser. I'm the host of the Up Next podcast for Sydney Opera House. I'm here on beautiful Gadigal country, and tonight we're going to be seeing the film Light Years projected on the sails behind us. Sam, you are the principal artist of Light Years. It's so great to have you here this evening.
Thank you.
And it's an incredible film, and the first thing I want to ask you is about the process of condensing such a long history into just 17 minutes. You know, it's not just the 50 years of the Opera House, it's the planning, the building, and everything that went on before. Can you tell me about your process in creating the film?
Sure. I have a long relationship with the Opera House. I've been working on it for about 10 years, lots of historical interpretation, lots of deep diving into the story itself. So thank goodness for that, because there's a lot to surmise. It's an incredible story in itself, but then there's this great history behind it too. The colonial history of the harbour, and then the long, much deeper history of the indigenous land that it's based on. So really the structure emerged out of a chronology that could then loop, and that sort of idea of looping time allows you to have this much smaller amount of time that the Opera House has been here in the much deeper history of place. So I'll talk about the structure if you like.
Yeah, I'd love to, especially the prologue. It's really interesting.
So the best thing to do there was to commission an artist who I met some time ago, Jake Duczynski, and I saw a beautiful piece of work he'd done for SBS. It was an online documentary called My Grandmother's Lingo. It's about the passing of oral histories of oral languages, of the indigenous languages across Australia. And his illustration style in that was so beautiful. I was actually teaching at UTS at the time, online documentary, and one of my students elected to use it, and I hadn't seen this documentary. I was so excited to see it. So I reached out to Jake, and he produced a really beautiful artist's treatment called Walami Jubagali. Walami is return, and Jubagali is the land we now also call Bennelong Point. So Walami Jubagali is a celebration of place. And you'll see a very beautiful celebration of the flora and the nature of it. There's also Nawi, the canoe, fish hooks, and just a very textural play. Also shells and the idea of midden, because the middens are all around here. And yeah, it's just exquisite. You'll see it's the first thing off. We move out of that into the harbour, and then we look at the origins of the Opera House. Why did we even have an Opera House? What was that about? And you know, obviously I'm not telling you a story with language, I'm telling you a story with imagery. So we see, for instance, the Labour Premier of New South Wales, Joseph Carl at the time, who commissioned this work. Without his vision, you would never have an Opera House here. Someone with their level of that tenacity to get that project done is quite remarkable in itself. And then we see a very beautiful David Moore image of migrants coming into Sydney on the ships. And that's a direct indication of why the Opera House is there. This impetus to tell stories and to celebrate a growing and diverse culture. Then we move through into the competition. We see Your Nutzen. We see Your Nutzen's competition entry. We look at that, and we look at the design process. We move through the design process into construction. Construction was very sensibly sort of blocked into 3 stages. So we see stage 1. We hear the magnificent Paul Robeson singing. Beautiful blues singer, came to the site. He was the first sort of official performance on the site. Very sonorous, deep voice, which you'll hear. And if you're live syncing with us, which is this super cool technology, you will be able to hear him in lip sync, which is just phenomenal. I'll get to that because that's really exciting, that part of it. Then we move through stage 2. Stage 2 is where we kind of we move into a sort of form of live action, because we have this wonderful archival film from Arup. They documented their stage 2 engineering, and it's wonderful on many levels. One of those levels is the fact that there was almost zero OH&S back then. So you've got these people clambering over the Opera House with literally a grappling hook and a string. So that's quite exciting, and it's lovely to sort of see live action, and you'll see it goes across the different sails, so it tells a sort of interesting narrative across the sails. Then we're into stage 3. Your Nutzen by then had departed the project, and Peter Hall had taken over. This is a very interesting part of the project. We actually open up the Opera House and look inside as the concert hall builds, and the various people who are involved in stage 3 kind of are featured. we close the Opera House up again. I hope I'm not spoiling it. And we go to the opening, and from the opening we go into the first performances. Then we go backstage and we look at all the work that goes into art, because this is an incredibly important part of it. So you see lots of the fabulous staff members of the Opera House at control desks, checking lighting, getting ready. Then we see the audience. Then we see a much more modern sense of performance. We see an amazing cast of performers. Lizzo's up there, Iggy Pop's up there. There's real diversity. The resident company's beautiful Bangara imagery, beautiful Bell Shakespeare imagery, beautiful ACO and SSO imagery, all just coming together. So it's quite a trip in 17 minutes, but if it wasn't, you wouldn't be telling this story. And then the finale is Light Years, but I won't spoil the finale.
Yeah, so much for the viewers at home to look forward to seeing in just a moment. The soundscape is also incredible.
Yes.
Could you give us a little insight into how that came together?
Yes, very talented composer Hylton Mowday and sound designer Andrew Stevenson, all collaborators of mine. So we had shorthand, which is great because we didn't have much time to create the soundscape for this. But again, just beautiful Foley in the more diegetic elements. So when you're in the construction footage, for instance, you can hear the hammering, you can hear the shouting of construction workers and engineers between each other. You can hear the digital printout of the dot matrix printers as they calculate the actual X, Y, and Z space of the construction. It's next to that, very symphonic sounds and very modern sounds and music wrapped around the performance. Beautiful soundscape, and props to Hylton and Andrew for really pulling together a really beautiful sound design. One more thing I must mention, Josh produced a beautiful and very meditative ambient piece that starts our whole soundscape across the prologue of Jake's work. Yeah.
Incredible. And before we get into the projection, I wanted to ask you, you've got quite a long history with the house yourself. What does it mean tonight to be here and to have your film projected onto the sails?
Oh, it's immense.
Yeah.
It's very moving. It was great last night, actually, because if I can use the phrase, the old guard were present and they were seeing it for themselves. A lot of living staff, living members of the sort of story of the Opera House were there, and to get their approval was enormous. I don't think I'd be standing here without that, actually, because it's a very difficult story. There's a lot of emotional investment in this story from all over the place. I mean, I remember Jack Zuntz, who was a major engineer and ran Arab, the company, for many years as well. I got to interview him when he was about 94. Everything was crystal clear, like everything was in perfect focus. Every memory, every fraught sense of did we do right by Utzon, all these difficult elements, they're just sharp as a tack. So you have to really think about these people and the multi-perspective on the story. And luckily I've had a decade to think about that, so hopefully it's reflected in what's here today.
So much to put into the 17 minutes, and we're about to watch it.
Great.
Thanks so much for tuning in this evening. Over to Light Years.
Of this present mood to ensure that one day in the not too distant future a truly mighty and wonderful structure will stand on Bennelong Point to demonstrate to the world that we Australians have a pride in our cultural development equal to any.
a sculpture which could be seen from all sides. And besides that, it sits in a harbor with buildings of a square character. And you don't want to have the name Opera House written on it. You want to see this is an opera house like you see this is a church. So I wanted to come out from the uniform family of office blocks to stand out as a personality.
So much effort gone into it, and you will never be able to assemble, to put so much skill into one building as gone into this one.
Instead of crying, I must keep fighting until I'm dying. And old man River, he'll just keep rolling
Paul Robeson, first celebrity to sing at Sydney's Opera House.
I am Benelong, and my spirit, and the spirit of my people lives, and their dance, their music, and their drama, and their laughter also remains.
In declaring the Sydney Opera House open.